Hello and welcome back everyone to another episode of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 10th of January and this is the first IOH for 2023. Also, it is IOH 89. If anyone is new to Indexer Office Hours, this is the town square for graph ecosystem participants to come together and discuss the most important topics that are relevant for indexers. This is an open discussion, and to that token, we love participation. So at certain sections of today's call, we'll open it up for audience participation, and you can participate via voice or the text chat. As a reminder, this will be recorded and published onto public channels like YouTube, so bear that in mind. Yeah, and with that, I'm excited to get into today's agenda. It's a very exciting one. There's a lot that we have to cover. So before I do, I want to direct this to Martin, if Martin's on the call. Can you unmute if you're here, Martin?
I'm here.
Perfect. I'll let you take it away with the announcement or discussion as it relates to MIPS.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Abel. I guess just a quick message. Just want to share if anyone has like any questions or regarding like the foundation or related to the posts in the forum the last 24 hours, just wanted to acknowledge that the foundation will respond there, and I will, thank everyone that is sharing their feedback there and thoughts, not only to Marc-André but everyone else on that post, and encourage everyone to join like the recommendations post. We're doing and growing this ecosystem all together, and it would be great to capture all those conversations in a productive way in that post. And of course, my DMs are open if anyone wants to reach out or talk anymore. That's pretty much on my side. Back to you, Abel, if you want.
Cool. Yeah. Very brief, and I appreciate that. Jim has posted the forum post if anyone's interested in that particular conversation. I too want to express my gratitude to Mark for sharing his thoughts. It was a very well articulated post, and very positive and constructive. And so, yeah, I hope that this can spark a very, constructive, productive conversation as to how we can improve MIPS. So yeah, thank you, Mark, for proposing, and I look forward to everyone's discussion and input in the forum. And I just want to flag, there's a lot that people want to kind of discuss on the topic. If you could direct those thoughts to the forum, that would be fantastic, because obviously we want one central place where we can host this discussion and make sure that everything gets addressed. So the foundation will respond as Martin has outlined, and we look forward to evolving MIPS together as one big community. Cool. Well,
Abel, sorry to interrupt. Can I again, to be constructive here, can I ask that maybe the next week is everybody's opportunity to put their input to paper on that forum post, and that we apportion some significant time next week to IOH to actually talk about it once everybody's had the chance to put their thoughts to paper on, what they suggest we might do to course correct.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, the key aspect there is like, just if everyone has thoughts on this, please do direct this to the forum. That is going to be the central place that we kind of host the discussion. Yeah, it's going to be really productive if everything's in one place. But yeah, I would be open to the idea of also discussing that in the following IOH after people, like you said, have had some time to write comments on the topic there. So yeah,
I want to +1 that. I think certainly, in the interim, it's important that kind of everybody directs feedback there so that it is centralized. But it's good to be able to have a discussion in a venue like this once everybody has kind of shared their perspective. So I would definitely +1 taking space for this in the next IOH.
Cool. Well, yeah, if there's appetite, we can definitely facilitate that. Oh, I think, Mark, you want to hop in?
Well, just wanted to thank everyone who reached out to me, give me some feedback, and also like to thank Martin for taking time to speak with me today. I welcome everyone to review propositions, suggest ideas, but I think what's important is really to focus on improvement ideas. We want to look forward. We want to what's best for the protocol, for the team, and everyone involved. So let's focus on the future and what we can do better.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for all of your participation and such positive thoughts and written comments. Thank you. So with that out of the way, let's get into today's agenda. We have a packed one. Before we get into everything, I want to start off with opening remarks. And with that, I will give a shout out to 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧. It is episode 97, which is the best parts of 2022. Nick has had a hell of a year in terms of producing podcasts. I mean, he is very consistent. And so if you're interested in perhaps maybe going back in time and finding out a bit about the best parts that were featured in the 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧 episode, there is a part 1, there is a part 2. And you can go check it out as per the agenda, which is, it's linked right there. Cool. So let's hand it over to Anna, who's going to take us into our regular schedule of Repo Watch.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Welcome to Repo Watch, everyone. This is the first one of the year. So I'll just go straight into it. You know how this goes. Full details on the agenda. If you have any questions, please unmute or message. Okay, so on the execution layer clients, today we have a new release of 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, so version 2.33.0. So this has a lot of fixes and improved compatibilities with Go Ethereum. It has some new flags for RPC batching, so RPC batch limit, improvements in block processing, and some additional changes. Now, I just want to comment that this morning I've tried this version of 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and it has not worked for me. I think the reason why it has not worked is something to do with the stage sync to always use single MDBS transaction, even for initial cycle. But I am still troubleshooting to figure out what happened. Right. Please message or unmute yourself if you've tried this release and is working.
It's definitely not working, Anna, so agree with you entirely. Part of there's two issues. One is they've added some ability to sort of throttle large responses, RPC responses, and they've set the default to 100K, which I'm assuming is bytes. That immediately causes problems for indexers because we are making responses that are much bigger than that. I set mine to I think 0.5 MB, and that was fine. Everything seemed to be getting through. But on top of that issue, there was also an issue with they made some changes to some of the trace RPC methods that introduced some kind of regression, and that broke a whole bunch of subgraphs. There is a fix come out that is 2.33.1. I haven't had a chance to test it yet. It only came out an hour ago, but supposedly that fixes the trace issues. So anyone who's interested, just pitch up in the 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 chat. That's where people are talking about it.
Thank you for that, Jim. Yes, I think that's the only Discord channel I haven't joined yet. But they're super useful for anyone who's trying to find answers. Nethermind and others are super responsive, so make use of them. Okay, I will give a go that release and message everyone if it has worked. Next release is for Nethermind. So here we have 2 releases since last time we spoke. So release 1.15 was the earlier release, which introduces ETH67 support. It has some trace-related updates and improvements and fixes on JSON RPC sync metrics etc. Now, this release we've been running this release for a couple of since it's been released, and it's working. For the newest release of Nethermind, so version 1.16.0 unstable, so this is their first pre-release. This has a lot of improvements, so improved state sync performance, read-write lock, fixes edge case on girly, but the very important change here is the renaming XDAI configuration to Gnosis. So when you pass to Nethermind Runner, in the past you're passing the -C XDAI. Now you'd be passing the -C Gnosis, and that to move to that configuration, you have to migrate. You have to move the database from the old directory into the new one. However, for everyone who's running with the configuration with XDAI archive, I was not able to find what that means for moving the database, or whether this change has also flag has also changed. And I have messaged the Nethermind team, and I'm waiting for a response. Okay, cool. Then on the consensus layer clients, we have a new release on Nimbus 22.12. This contains 60% more efficient block replaying, support for obtaining a deposit snapshot during trusted node sync mode. There's an official Docker image for the Nimbus validator client. And the validator client will now use the standard exit code 129 in case of detected doppelganger on the network. Okay. There are some breaking changes for Nimbus. So, the status of the Nimbus ETH Docker image no longer includes the Nimbus validator client binary, and the shell script included in the released turbos. So make sure you use the new dedicated image for the Nimbus validator client. And this is a medium urgency release. We've been running this Nimbus release, and it seems to be working. On the graph stack, there's been a new indexer service and agent release, so version 0.20.8, and this impacts indexer common, so fixing block hash from number usage, and impacts indexer CLI for improving action update input parsing. Before I hand it over to Juan for protocol economics, does anyone have anything to add apart from the comments in the chat? Thank you for sharing your Nethermind Gnosis bash, Vince. All right, if there are no comments, I am handing over to Juan.
You there, Juan? Oh, it seems to be unmuted, but I can't hear, so I'm assuming there's some audio issues. Give it a couple of seconds. Actually, let's do this. Juan, while you're figuring out your audio issues, if you have some, Pedro would like to share some updates on the MIPS program. So maybe, Pedro, you can hop in, and then maybe after that, Juan, if your audio is working, we can slot you back in for Protocol Watch.
Yeah. Hey, Abel, can you hear me well?
Yes, can indeed.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yes, I can do a very brief update. Again, this is just a heads up as we're heading into new phases and new chains, but all of these will be shared in a written format and shared via email and Discord announcements. And if there's specific actions for you to take on, we'll give you all at least 2 days of notice for you to act. But this is just like a sanity check on the program itself. So, as you know, the Gnosis Phase 2 form will be shared right after this call. We mentioned in Notion that the due date was the January the 10th, so we'll be sharing this form really, really soon. This marks the end of Gnosis Phase 2 up to Mission 3, and this allowed us to ensure that Gnosis subgraphs on mainnet are indeed working well. We've been monitoring QoS, things like latency, data freshness, all of that stuff. We've been monitoring it, and yeah. So new subgraphs will be migrating now, and so if you're still obviously active on Gnosis mainnet, you're incentivized still to do so because, and if you go back to the Notion page, you'll see this. We had this mission 4 for Gnosis Phase 2, and that means just serving new ones that will be published to the network by anyone, really, not just MIPS things that we're using for testing. Like any subgraph developer can publish new ones now, and so we'll be monitoring until the end of the program how you participate and as an indexer on the network and serving Gnosis, really. And as we've been doing, it's going to be mostly based on QoS metrics, like I just mentioned. And so, yes, that's the update on Gnosis Phase 2, essentially. Again, I'll share this in a written format with the dates, but starting today, we'll be unlocking new subgraphs to be published onto the network. And so I believe EdgeNode or the foundation will do a PR about it that might unlock or that might bring new subgraph developers over the network. So do be on the lookout. Polygon Phase 1. I've seen people complaining about the forum link. I gotta be honest, I don't know how that happened, but it seems like it's not working. So I apologize, but we fixed it, and I'm going to share it with Polygon participants via email and also post it in the Discord channel. Don't fret, we have time. You have time to fill out this form. Again, these are the early address for new MIPS participants that have applied once we've announced Polygon. But again, if you're one of those, you'll have time. And the final thing, I mean, obviously, apart from the forum post that Martin just mentioned, we're taking the time to properly take that all of that into account and properly respond to everyone's feedback. Really, I just wanted to also share that there's going to be another workshop. I think this one is an exciting one, and it's aligned with what has been brought up by a few. David Lutter from EdgeNode will be doing a workshop in 2 weeks on database sharding, and that's going to be a theme for the following weeks and months, really, on helping indexers scaling their ops efficiently. And so we'll be learning from core devs that they've been operating a pretty big indexer. Let's say if you were to think of the hosted service as a big indexer, and so they will be sharing all of their learnings and whatnots for you folks to be prepared for what's coming next, really. So I think that's fairly excited. It's not going to be just one workshop. We're going to have many, but this is the first one specifically on database sharding. And early next week, there's going to be another official announcement. New chains are coming, many more and in parallel. So that's something we're working on, making sure that we have the documentation ready and everything to get you started, really. And we are already taking into account Mark's feedback on this stuff. Next week we'll be sharing more. That's all. Happy to answer any questions you may have had. Bring David here, please. Yep, Abel, that's all on my side for now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Pedro, for serving us our weekly alpha on the MIPS program. Exciting stuff to come. Cool. Well, now we move into the main show, or the main part of the show, to say, which is Thomas. So is Thomas here? Can you just unmute your mic and say hi, if just so I know that you're here, Thomas?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Nice to have you here.
Oh, good, because my internet just completely shut off a few minutes ago, and I just managed to get back online. So if you can give me 1 minute,
yeah,
getting
sure
ready.
thing. Sure thing. Yeah, actually, that reminds me. Juan also had his internet go out as well. I really
Yep.
to watch. So, Juan,
So
why don't you-
it was a global Argentina blackout or something.
Oh,
Maybe.
that was really loud.
That was not.
Like excessively loud. Like RIP headphone users, as Payne said. It's really loud.
Oh, whoops. How about now?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Whoopsie. Yeah, using different mics, gain settings are really difficult with different mics. Cool.
Hey,
So-
I think I'm ready. I hope it doesn't go out again.
Wonderful. Yeah, happy to go, but we just want to give Juan a moment to do protocol.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
No worries. Well, I'm gonna be quick so we can get to the meat of it with Tomas. For forum governance, we have a bunch of GDRs that were closed. Most of them are draws, like GDR 11, 12, 4, 9, 10, 13, and 14. All of those are draws due to the statute of limitations. And then we have GDR 15, which was quite a heated debate. The arbitrators ended up deciding that they are going to accept one of them and make the rest, which I think are 4 auto disputes, all of those draws to kind of like close it with an accepted but not excessive punishment because of all of the things that were going through the debate. It is an interesting debate, so anyone interested, I would recommend they get into the thread and dig a little bit deeper. But yeah, that's how they were resolved. Then we have the GIP for file data sources, where Leo clarified that IPNS support is banned but not included in the first release of file data sources. Then we have some issues with Radical regarding GIP 0001 post. Basically, one of the users is saying that they are having issues accessing the Radical articles. Going to forum research, we have most of the core dev team updates for January, as well as the guild's update for December, since the latest IOH that we did wasn't like late enough so that all of the core devs had the December update posted. I recommend you go read them. We're not going to get into detail for those because they are quite huge one papers. Then we get into forum research. We have another discussion, which is the production query URL not working. I think this is for the Edge and Node Studio. I'm not entirely sure, but there's someone asking why one of the API keys is working and the other one is not. Next up, we have the contract repository. There were a few merge PRs regarding new addresses being added to the NPM packages, mainly the Ethereum DID registry and the Ethereum DID registry for 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗪𝗀, and some open PRs for L2. Next up, we have the network subgraphs. For the core network subgraph, we had 2 new releases. They are small releases, but still worth mentioning them. One is the L2 aware deployment. These, as I stated, I think in the last IOH, it just kind of like tracks the deposits and withdrawals from either side of the bridge regarding the L1, L2 implementations. And then we had the Ethereum DID registry fix. This is because the Ethereum DID registry for all of the environments that we had up until now were the same addresses, and now we have different addresses. I think in 𝗨𝗀𝗪𝗀 and 𝗨𝗪𝗀1. So we needed to kind of like make that dynamic instead of like just hard coded, which is always something that you should be doing. There's nothing major, so indexers don't really need to use these new versions. They're not really interesting for the index agent yet, but we're gonna be deploying non-IPFS versions relatively soon for everyone in case they want to sync those. That's pretty much it for Protocol Watch, and I'm gonna handle it over to 𝗨𝗂𝗟𝗶 again.
Amazing. And then I'm going to swiftly hand it to Thomas to take us into his talk for today,
Yes.
which is all about Arbitrum. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if it's coming up. Can you guys see it?
Yep, we can see it
Yep.
clearly. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to go fast. In the interest of time. So today, the idea is to talk about the graphs move to layer 2. The idea will be to provide a quick overview of the plans we have, where we are with those, and like the reasons that why we are doing this. In the future, there will probably be L2 focused missions on the MIPS program. So additionally, this is also meant as a provide context to, I mean, for everyone, but especially for those taking part of the MIPS program. There's quite a lot of ground to cover today, so I'm going to try and leave most of the technical details out. But in case you want to deep dive into any of the things we covered today, here's a list of resources you can check. It's mostly GIPs on the forum. Some of them have a pretty dense back and forth conversation going on. So if you want to deep dive, I suggest you go check these ones out after the presentation. So yeah, flash news, the graph protocol is moving to Arbitrum, to a layer 2 chain. This is probably raises some questions. The idea is to try and address most of those common questions. Try to talk about what does this mean, how does this affect network participants, in particular, how does this affect indexers or curators. So let's get started. The first obvious thing you might think of is why are we even doing this? Easy answer is everyone wants a faster and cheaper protocol. If you think about the main purpose of the protocol that we have on mainnet today is to support and coordinate the decentralized indexing network that we know as the graph. And if we can make that faster and cheaper, that means more participants, more activity. And it also probably will unlock new use cases that we perhaps today don't have. We're thinking of secondary markets, composability between other protocols. So faster and cheaper is good for everyone. So why not? And again, why is this important? We are today on a bear market, but Ethereum is increasingly getting more popular, and that means it's more expensive to use. If we are stuck on Ethereum mainnet for the next bull run, then maybe it becomes prohibitively expensive for indexers, or really for any of the network actions to even make sense to perform. So that means the protocol is not useful. So we definitely want to avoid that, and that's why we are doing all this work. So let's talk about Arbitrum. So what's Arbitrum? What's an L2? L2 is a scaling solution for Ethereum mainnet. In particular, the one we selected is Arbitrum, is built on top of Ethereum. It inherits the way it's built. It inherits the security of Ethereum mainnet. So that's a nice feature. It's also EVM compatible. We can deploy the same contracts we have on mainnet, and they will work for the 99% of the use cases. And we considered other protocols. There's pages like L2Bit or others where you can see the pros and cons of each one of those. We think that Arbitrum is the most mature solution at the moment, and particularly 1 year back when we made the decision. It was the most mature. It's the one with the most total value logged. It has a few like very big protocols already on it, like LivePeer, for instance. There's one caveat then. Even today, Arbitrum 1, which is the main chain for Arbitrum, is still considered beta. So yeah, all of this is brand new. So we obviously need to be careful as well. So these are some rough estimates based on deployments we made and running like the typical actions like open, closing allocations, adding stake, that sort of stuff, operations on the network. It's at least 25, 26 times cheaper to use. There's a few upgrades planned already on Arbitrum that potentially could increase these 4 times for additional 4x. So it is considerably cheaper. So what does it mean to deploy the protocol on layer 2? It's really like, yeah, taking the contracts we have and redeploying them on a new chain. It's as easy as it sounds, but it's not that easy. Like, if you do that, you have like a completely isolated new instance of the protocol. So then you start having questions like, I have now 2 instances of the protocol. Like, how do they talk to each other? Do they even talk to each other? What's the long-term plan? Do I want to keep both and operate both and be like have to be careful and thoughtful about both of them, or can I like eventually get rid of one? So these type of questions are the ones that we started asking and thinking about 1 year back. One example of that is so we have the GRT token, like the GRT token, like the contract, the token itself lives on Ethereum mainnet. How do we send these tokens over to the Arbitrum deployment? That's where bridges coming, famous or infamous sometimes bridges. So we created additionally on top of deploying the protocol 202, we created our own custom bridge for that uses Arbitrum messaging system. And this sounds a bit scary, and it's because it is. Yeah, this is a very simple diagram of what's going on. We have the two, again, the 2 instances of the protocol, if you will. One is on L1, the other one is on L2, connected through a custom bridge that is, of course, contracts on both sides of the spectrum here. So how does this work? If you want to send tokens from the L1 to the L2, you send tokens to the bridge contract. They are locked on an escrow contract. And then that gets passed through Arbitrum's messaging system into the L2. And the bridge on L2 mints the tokens you escrowed on L2. Yeah. The other way, if you want to go back to L1, like you send the tokens to the L2 bridge, the tokens are burnt. And then the L1 bridge releases the tokens on that were locked on the escrow on L1. There's a delay period, like you need to wait for 7 days. This is related to how Arbitrum works and how the like fraud proofing system they have. But that's a whole separate topic. So as I said before, yeah, bridges are risky. They are scary. I think I recall reading a metric. Maybe it was like $2 or $3 billion have been stolen from bridges in the past like 1 or 2 years. So it's a pretty popular target for hackers because bridges typically work in the same way. Like you have an escrow, and if you manage to fool the escrow into releasing tokens or minting them or whatever, like you hit the jackpot. So yeah, there have been quite a few hacks the past couple of years. But like Arbitrum has a standard bridge. We could use that, but we needed extra features on top of that unfortunately they don't offer. For instance, the ability to upgrade it, the ability to pause it, and the ability especially to transport arbitrary messages. Like when you're bridging tokens, you can have the ability to send extra data from one layer to the other one. That's proven, that's pretty powerful, and it's proven very helpful for the migration that we have on the way. So it's a feature that we wanted. So since this is again very scary business, we've decided. Obviously, first we had three different audit processes. Like we had an internal audit, we had an audit with one of the most known audit firms, and then we had a community audit using through Code Arena. All of them, they found different sample varieties. We had back and forth with them, so we were pretty thoughtful of that. And also, the plan is to make a gradual move into L2, not just like hit a button and boom, we're fully committed to L2. So the idea is to, like, as we gain like confidence with what we built, we get users start using it, we start to gradually migrate the operation from L1 to L2. And I will talk about this a bit more in just a few minutes. Okay, so taking a step back, this is like a very nice diagram of all the contracts and all the interactions between them and the participants of the graph protocol. It's quite complex, as you can see. This is what we intend to have now. One sitting on mainnet and a copy of the protocol really on Arbitrum 1. It is a copy. So this might look like a mess, like why are we duplicating the protocol? And there's a couple of reasons for that. And all of them boil down to the fact that cross-chain communication is hard and it's slow. So if you want to send messages from L1 to L2, if your protocol relies on like syncing data from one layer to the other one, that's a very complex system because the communication channel is pretty slow. Going from L2 to L1 takes 7 days. There's a lot of nuance that you need to take into account when like designing these contracts. Also, before a recent upgrade to Arbitrum, the messages weren't even atomic, so you could have layer 1 think that like a transaction succeeded and a message was sent to the L2, but the L2 maybe never received that, and that's a scary proposition. So yeah, the idea here is we don't want to have cross-chain communication. We want to minimize that as to the bare minimum if possible. So another suggestion could be like, can't we just move the protocol over, like shut it down on L1 and like do a SQL dump or whatever Ethereum's equivalent might be, copy the state, put it on the L2 and start over? That would be nice. There is unfortunately not possible. Like most of the state migration would, for instance, depend on users initiating that. And also we have a network. We have a decentralized indexing network that's running, and we can't stop unless we want to stop serving queries, for instance. So it's unfortunately not possible. Another suggestion could be like we could start a new protocol, like a V2. Like, okay, the graph V2 now runs on Arbitrum. V1 runs on mainnet, V2 runs on Arbitrum, and that's it. The thing with that is like, okay, you have two isolated instances of the protocol, V1, V2, that's fine. But that's like double the work, double the effort to maintain and to operate the protocol on 2 chains. So that's also something we didn't want to do. So ideally, what we want to do is to deploy an L2, gradually transition from L1 to L2, and then sort of like deprecate the L1 or make it so that it's not really economically feasible to be on the L1. So there's no reason to be there. So you would naturally go to the L2 deployment. So I know I'm going maybe a bit fast, but as I said, I wanted to cover a lot of ground. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. I haven't been paying attention to the chat, but
just a quick one, Thomas. We're not pressed for time, so if you want to, take your time,
okay,
you're more than welcome to. Yeah.
Okay, I thought we had to make it. Okay. So 1 sec. Okay, so what happens with token issuance, right? So we have issuance as a means to reward indexers. So if we think about this scenario where we have the protocol on L1, the protocol on L2, like how does that work? How does issuance work on that scenario? We thought about this, and we thought about 2 different alternatives. There is a GIP 34, I think, that goes over this in a lot of detail. Essentially, the 2 alternatives is like the first one is we pre-mint rewards on L1, and we send them using the bridge to L2, like periodically, every week, every month, whatever we want. That's one of the alternatives. We wouldn't have issuance on L2, only issuance in L1 in that case. And that's nice because if you want to know like what's the total supply, like that it's not possible to mint on L2, so that's a bit easier to make the calculations. But obviously, we just said like a couple of slides ago that we wanted to minimize like the cross-chain communication, and here we are actually depending like on that for the for everything to work, right? So that's a huge con of this option. The other option is to have native minting on L1 and on L2, switch from an exponential issuance to a linear issuance. In that way, like you can very easily, since it's linear, you can very easily predict what the expected issuance would be given like the current supply, the current block, and a future block. It's a very simple math. One downside of that approach is that if you want to know what's the total supply of GRT, that you need to consider now both layers and like they've added up. So these are essentially the 2 options we are thinking with. We are strongly leaning towards option 2. There is no official decision yet, but probably soon we will get a consensus on that. Again, if you are interested in the details of this, there's GIP 34. You can, this one has a pretty lengthy discussion, if I recall correctly. So yeah, as you might imagine, all of this is a pretty substantial change. It's pretty can be pretty overwhelming. It's a lot of moving pieces, and as it says here, it's like the biggest change to the protocol since it launched a couple of years ago. So we came up with a plan in 3 phases to deploy all of this and to gradually move from L1 to L2. These are the 3 phases. The first phase, it's been completed last December. It's basically to deploy the protocol to Arbitrum, deploy the bridge on both sides, make all the configurations that are necessary to connect them. But the L2 will have no rewards. Like there is no like the issuance is it's not changing. Still limited to L1. If you want to have GRT on Arbitrum, you need to go through the bridge. That's perfectly fine. So there's no rewards here. Stage 2, which is where we are right now, is to decide on one of the options I mentioned before. Deploy that. Monitor, gain confidence as the protocol starts being used. Stage 3 is where we say, okay, now we have a high confidence that this is working. This is what we wanted. We now need to migrate all the state from L1 to L2, and that includes like stake, indexer stake, delegations, allocations, subgraph data, everything. That's a very complicated process, so it's that's why it's its own like stage. There's also the fact to consider that you need to provide an incentive for someone to want to go to the L2. Having cheaper and faster transactions is a good incentive, but also like you need to have issuance on L2. Like if you're indexing on L2 and you're close on allocation, you would expect to be rewarded with indexing rewards. So by that point, we need to have a substantial amount of the total amount of the rewards being given to the L2. Okay, so stage 1, I think I talked about this just now. Deploy the network on L2, gain confidence, deploy the bridge. As a risk mitigation measure, is again, there's no issuance on L2. So even if there is like a vulnerability with the bridge, like the impact would be somewhat limited. As I said, this stage is over by now. We deployed the main, like all the contracts on the protocol last December. Let me see. Yeah, and governance has ratified this deployment through a GGP. Deploy. Okay, this we can skip. Yeah, so a good part of this stage is to ensure like we know what's going on. So we have also set up like proper monitoring to know like when tokens are being moved, what's going on. Deep diving into each transaction, like making sure that everything is working as expected and there's no like surprises before we move on to the next stage. Another thing to consider here is that so far we've only been talking about like the protocol, the smart contracts living on the protocol, but there's also the rest of the components, like the off-chain components, the UIs, the studio, the graph node. Like there's a bunch of other software components that need to be tuned to work with the L2. So this splitting this into stages also gives the rest of the team to work on bringing those updated. What can go wrong? Well, lots of things. There could be a hack with the bridge. If there was a hack, then the only funds at risk are like the ones that are locked on the escrow. If there's a problem with the with Arbitrum, there's limited exposure to risk because there's no ability for like issuing tokens on L2. And another factor, I guess, I said to consider is that we have all the other components that are not smart contracts that they could be the changes could be more complex than we initially thought. This is a brief side note. Some of you may already have been using GRT on Arbitrum even before December, which is when we deployed the protocol on L2. And that's because Arbitrum provides what they call a standard ERC20 bridge. Yeah, I'm not gonna go in detail about this, but just wanted to make you guys aware of this. By default, any ERC20 token that lives on mainnet that isn't registered to the Arbitrum gateway, you can bridge that using the standard ERC20 gateway. And the term gateway here is bridge, means bridge. They're synonyms pretty much. So you even before December, you could bridge GRT over to Arbitrum using this standard bridge. So what happens now is that both the standard GRT and the official one, let's say the one we deployed in December, are live on Arbitrum. So now you are left with the question of, okay, what do I do with the standard ERC20 GRT? One option would be like, I can go back to the L1 using the standard bridge, and then go from the L1 to the L2 back using the custom one, the one we deployed in December. That's an option. It involves like a couple of transactions, takes a couple of days, a week at least. The other option is you could use a token swap contract on Arbitrum and exchange the standard GRT for the real official GRT. That's a contract we are developing now. It's still under development, but it's an option we will provide. It will be cheaper and faster for if you're stuck with the standard GRT on Arbitrum. So stage 2, as we said, the goal is to incentivize the use of the Arbitrum protocol, and we do that by enabling rewards. Like if you enable rewards, we expect people to go after them. This is the stage we are in right now. As I said before, the implementation, the code is done, the audit has been done already as well. We are now in the process of like actually fully committing to one of the designs. We had the 2 designs I mentioned before. We need to commit on one, deploy that, and essentially go through the entire same process we did for stage 1, which is like deploy, monitor it, ensure that governance ratifies the deployment and all that. Initially, only a fraction of the rewards will be assigned to the L2. So that means, let's say, like out of the 100% of tokens that are issued, let's say per block, per epoch, whatever period you want, let's say 25% of those would happen on the L2, and 75% of them will be issued on L1. As we gain confidence on the bridge, and if we gain confidence on Arbitrum, we will gradually increase and shift those percentages so that the L2 starts to be more favored than the L1, until eventually we end up with 0 rewards on L1. And that's by that point, like you wouldn't really have any reasons for using the L1 really. We've set like internally like this condition or target, which is once we've seen like rewards distributed for at least 30 epochs, we start increasing the percentage. This is mostly an like internal target we have, probably subject to changing. And we, of course, again, we have been developing monitoring and tools that help us understand and know what's happening with the both the instances of the protocol. So what can go wrong in this stage? We might find about issues with the issuance mechanisms. As I said before, whatever option we choose, it will be a new and different issuance mechanism than what we have now. So that's a new way for the protocol to work. So that's potentially a new surface for hacks, for attacks, and or for things to like go wrong. So that we need to be careful with that. Then you have the fact that you have rewards on two chains. Transactions on two chains are have different costs, so that might create some like economic behaviors that we maybe didn't think about. That could be detrimental to the protocol. It's not something we think it's probable, but might happen. Yeah, we can find again. It could be that there are issues with the way that rewards are issued or distributed, depending on which of the options we decide to go on. So finally, stage 3, as we said, is to move on to the migration step. Migration step means like we want to stop using the protocol on L1. Maintaining two chains is like too complex, and there is really no reason why we would want to keep the protocol on the L1 alive. So again, the way we found to ensure that happens is to reduce the rewards on the L1 to 0. That will naturally make people want to leave and chase those rewards on the L2. But we still have all the state that I mentioned before, like take allocations, subgraph data, curation data. We need to migrate all that from L1 to L2, and that's where the ability to add custom data to on our bridge comes in handy. We've been writing helper contracts that facilitate moving over the state from the L1 to L2. This is actively being worked on. It's been audited last week, I believe. We are now working with the auditors to resolve a couple of issues. But yeah, this is also a very complex thing, because you have things like vesting contracts, which are tokens locked on L1, but you can actually use those contracts to participate in the protocol. So there are a few like edge cases or very where you need to be really careful. So by this time, when we are thinking about using these helpers, like we need to, of course, be completely sure that we can rely on the bridge, we can rely on the deployment on L2. We need to already have like substantial traffic on the L2. So yeah, it's still a couple of months away. What are the risks with this third stage? Again, this is a very complex state migration. It's currently we're still working on this, and we have identified several edge cases which are very tricky to handle, and like there could be other edge cases that we haven't identified. So yeah, like a proper auditing and reviewing and taking things slowly is again the approach we're taking. And that's it, I think. Yeah, but there was a couple of slides more, but I think that's all I had. I hope it wasn't too much information. I wanted to provide like an overview of everything, like where we are at, what are our plans. As I said, one of the things we want to do is to start increasing the traffic on the L2. That means we want people to start testing there. There's potentially MIPS missions coming related to this. So yeah, wanted to provide context, a broad overview of everything related to the L2. There is those GIPs 34, 37, and 40 with a lot of details. But if you want to do a deep dive, I suggest you go there. And of course, you can always contact us using through Discord or GitHub or whatnot.